Do you know the words memento mori?
No.
It means remember death. Remember, you must die.
Alex, I've spoken to you many times over the last decade, and I've always asked you about a sequel to 28 Days Later. And you told me in one of our interviews you had an idea, but someone else needed to write it. So what changed?
They did write it. Someone had a crack at it, and it didn't quite work. And then I had a crack at essentially writing the same story, and it also didn't work. And so the problem was not, as it were, with the other writer. There was something wrong about the story. And Danny identified the problem, which is that it was generic. I mean, you could be more complex than that, but the basic problem is it was too generic. And I think what that did was give us the chance to step right back and, in a way, rid ourselves of all sorts of ways we could think about it, except one, which is that this belonged in a sort of spiritual way to the first movie, and then what would be the product of it. So it was almost like, speaking for myself, I needed to get the generic idea out of the way in order to be able to think about it freely.
Mr. Boyle, when I spoke to you for yesterday, I didn't get a chance to ask you about a sequel, but how often over the last 30 plus years had you thought about returning to this world and doing a third movie?
Well, weirdly, you guys play a role in it as well, because we do interviews with you, and you lobby questions like that about sequels, and that is an ingredient in it. There's also screenings of the original film which continue to take place. You know, we'd get asked to do Q&As after them, and they were hugely successful and impactful still. So there was clearly an appetite. I think we both instinctively wanted to make an original film. If we were going to do it, we wanted to make it as original as the first one had been. And the first one is indebted to the Romero films and various other, like every film is in a way. So this is indebted to the first film, but not over-obliged to it. It stands on its own feet. It can be experienced on its own. It's got a completely fresh cast. So we didn't have to have Cillian in the first one. He is connected to the film. He's an executive producer, and you see him towards the end of the second film, and he will be in the third film. But again, you're not indebted just to carry on with that character. You can start afresh. And for an apocalyptic movie, that moment of ground zero, that feeling of, right, what are we going to do? What are we going to begin with? And what are we going to, is a great fresh place, appropriate place to start. Yeah.
Alex, how did the pandemic factor into this at all, or did it?
It just sort of inevitably. One of the things that the pandemic showed, all sorts of things, but one of the things it shows is how quickly everything can change. The whole way you live in a day-to-day way, the way you interact with streets or shops or other people, or can't interact with them. There was certainly, living in London, there was an immediate echo that we all saw to the first film when London was depopulated, and you could experience that just by leaving your home. And so I think the simplest way of answering that is just to say it conceptually makes it feel more real. It's closer to you. The strangeness is closer to you. The speed of change is closer to you. And then Danny should speak about this, but he's got a more sophisticated point, which is to do with, after the shock of an initial change, how people then relax and what they relax into in terms of their relationship with risk.
Yeah, you know what it was like in COVID when it first happened. We were like this, and we all wore masks and gloves and disinfected vegetables, but then you gradually step out of that. You can't remain in that state. And that was very interesting for the actors as well, and for the story, that there's risk-taking, which you wouldn't necessarily do if it was still 28 days. But after 28 years, you've organised a very different way of living with the risks, and you understand what they are better and how far you can go all the time. That was a big help to us making the film, yeah.
Wait, sit here. Sit.
Auntie, what's going on?
Jimmy, sit still, keep quiet, and do not move from this spot.